Says I'm going, I'm live. Hello. Welcome to Frankenstein Tea. Today is Monday, June 29th, 2020. I am Kristen. I'm the director of the Island Free Library here on Block Island. I am at the upper level of the Island Free Library today, reading to you. This is Frankenstein Tea, and it is a short story program for adult listeners. It was and continues to be a chance for you to connect in with the library and for me to connect with you, to check in with ourselves, see how everybody's doing today, feeling today. I've heard something twice now from friends, both from very good friends, but at two different times, totally unrelated, how each of these people feels much more comfortable in phase one of reopening, right? We like phase one around here on Block Island. We're good at that, in fact, right? That's why we live on an island. We don't mind not being able to go out to eat. And we don't mind not having a movie theater or a playhouse or a bar, or we choose to live here because we don't need those things in our lives. So I've heard that twice. Like I like phase one, and I'm going to stay in phase one. And I share that today because I think that that's fine. Stay in phase one. Don't move ahead. Our governor in Rhode Island is on today talking about moving to phase three, and I have friends that want to stay in phase one. I say, right on, stay in phase one. Do what's best for you is my point. And if it's scary or if it's something more disconcerting than me just saying stay in phase one with a smile on my face, if it's a different sort of feeling that you're having about that, of course, there's mental health care providers and professionals that can help you work through that. But if it's just your choice and that's how you want to protect yourself, that's how you want to operate for the next few months here on Block Island, when we're completely inundated with people from all over the world, many of whom are not following the rules we were so very good about following in Rhode Island. And that's how we protected ourselves. That's why we're one of two states that are, battling this coronavirus, well, and are winning. We're doing that because we followed rules and because we have a sense of community where we take care of each other and understand the importance of that. If that's how you want to operate, to continue on that path, I say green light, full steam ahead. There are those of us who are going to be forced to operate in a different way, in a different manner, and we're gonna continue to stay safe. But we're gonna have to move into phase two and have to move into phase three, and brave that. And there's all kinds of discussion to have among there. But I did want to share with people, always at this check-in, do what's best for you. Do what's best for you. How are you going to keep your family, yourself, your coworkers, your home? How are you going to keep them safe? What's comfortable for you? And if that doesn't feel like a something healthy that you're doing, if that feels like because you're afraid or your anxiety is too high and you're anxious about that, then there is help for those things. But if that's just your educated and your choice for how to be resilient during this time, go for it. Totally go for it. Right? Do it. Don't get caught up in all this reopening phases and what you need to do and what you should do and what the rest of Block Island is doing and what the rest of Rhode Island is doing. Do what's best for you. That's my Monday. Welcome to Monday. So I'm Kristen. This is Frankenstein Tea. I read short stories to people on during this program. I will confess I'm not live to you right now. I did record this earlier. It is Monday, and I am in the library. That's not like a fake backdrop that sometimes happens. I really am here, and I'm only an hour or so ahead of you. But I wanted to take a little time this afternoon I've been in the building all day. This is generally my day off, and I do need to take a little time out this afternoon. So we have a big week ahead of us on Block Island. We have everybody, right? We have July 4th coming up. We have budget hearings. We have library staff coming in here. We're negotiating our own reopening phases. So it's a big week, and I'm taking a little time out. So I'm a little bit early, but I'm here, and I hope you're all well. And I'm going to read something today that is nonfiction, and I don't generally do that at this program. This is generally short story reads and fiction, but I'm going to read something today that's resonating with me, and I'd like to share it with you today. So this is the title of this book is The Source of Self-Regard: Selected Essays, Speeches, and Meditations by Toni Morrison. And that's this book. I didn't wear my shirt to match her book, but quite nice. The Source of Self-Regard. And I'm going to read, so this is by Toni Morrison. It's in our nonfiction collection. Again, Frankenstein Tea is, I treat this as a combination of reader's advisory as well as book group. So, I offer this as a piece of this entire book to maybe turn you on to it, to maybe turn you on to Toni Morrison. I think this particular piece is appropriate for a little bit of a national, not a little bit, but for the national dialogue that's happening currently in our country. So I'm going to read it today. So let's just start from the beginning. The Source of Self-Regard: Selected Essays, Speeches, and Meditation by Toni Morrison, Alfred A. Knopf, 2019. And I am reading a selection from this book. There she is. I'm reading a selection from this book called The Slave Body and the Black Body by Toni Morrison. In 1988, the same year James Cameron opened America's Black Holocaust Museum here in Milwaukee, I responded to an interviewer's question. Having published a novel investigating the lives of a family born into bondage, I was being asked about the need for, the purpose in articulating that unspeakable part of American history. The need for remembering the men, the women, the children who survived or did not survive the 300-odd years of international commerce in which their bodies, their minds, their talents, their children, their labor were exchanged for money they could lay no claim to. Since the argument for shunning bad memories or sublimating them was so strong and, in some quarters, understood not only to be progressive, but healthy, why would I want to disturb the scars, the keloids, that Civil War, civic battle, and time itself had covered? The slave body was dead, wasn't it? The black body was alive, wasn't it? Not just walking and talking and working and reproducing itself, but flourishing, enjoying the benefits of full citizenship and the fruits of its own labor. The question seemed to suggest that whatever the level of accomplishment, little good could come from writing a book that peeled away the layers of scar tissue that the black body had grown in order to obscure, if not annihilate, the slave body underneath. My answer was personal. It came from a kind of exhaustion that followed the completion of my novel, an irritability, a sorrow. There is no place, I said, where you or I can go to think about or not think about, to summon the presences of, or recollect the absences of slaves, or recollect the absences of slaves. Nothing that reminds us of the ones who made the journey and of those who did not make it. There is no suitable memorial or plaque or wreath or wall or park or skyscraper lobby. There is no 300-foot tower. There's no small bench by the road. There is not even a tree scored with an initial that I can visit or you can visit in Charleston or Savannah or New York or Providence, or better still, on the banks of the Mississippi. Somebody told me, I continued, that there is a gentleman in Washington who makes his living by taking busloads of people around to see the monuments of the city. He has complained because there is never anything there but Black people that he can show. There is never anything there about Black people that he can show. I can't explain to you why I think it's important, but I really do. I think it would refresh. Not only that, not only for Black people, it could suggest the moral clarity among white people when they were at their best, when they risked something, when they didn't have to risk and could have chosen to be silent. There's no monument for that either, except in the names of institutions that pay homage to a white person's care or generosity. Spingarn, General Howard, Spelman, etc. I don't have any model in mind, I said, or any person, or even any art form. I just have the hunger for a permanent place. It doesn't have to be a huge monumental face cut into a mountain. It can be small, someplace where you can put your feet up. It can be a tree. It doesn't have to be a Statue of Liberty. As you can tell, I was feeling quite bereft when I made those comments. When I use the term slave body to distinguish it from Black body, I mean to underscore the fact that slavery and racism are two separate phenomena. The origins of slavery are not necessarily or even ordinarily racist. Selling, owning people is an old commerce. There are probably no people in this auditorium among whose ancestors or within whose tribe there were no slaves. If you are Christian, among your people were slaves. If you are Jewish, among your people were slaves. If you are Muslim, among your people were the enslaved. If your ancestors are European, they lived under the serfdom of Eastern Europe, the tendency of feudalism in England and Viking Europe, Visigothic Spain, or 15th or 16th century Venice, Genoa, and Florence. The majority population of ancient Rome and ancient Greece all were deliberately constructed slave societies. Medieval Ghana, Songhai Mali, the Dahomey and Ashanti kingdoms. Slavery was critical to the world of Islam and systematic in the Orient, including 1,000 years in Korea alone. We are all implicated in the institution. The colonists of the New World patterning their economies on those earlier and contemporary societies that were dependent on free or forced labor, tried to enslave indigenous populations and would have imported any foreign group available, capable, and survivable. Available because highly organized African kingdoms could provide laborers to Europeans. Capable because they were clever, strong, and adaptable. Survivable because they were creative, spiritual, and intensely interested in their children. Foreigners from Africa, fit the bill. Not only the origins, but the consequences of slavery are not always racist. What is peculiar about New World slavery is not its existence, but its conversion into the tenacity of racism. The dishonor associated with having been enslaved does not inevitably doom one's heirs to vilification, demonization, or crucifixion. What sustains these latter is racism. Much of what made New World slavery exceptional was the highly identifiable racial signs of its population, in which skin color primarily, but not exclusively, interfered with the ability of subsequent generations to merge into the non-slave population. For them, there was virtually no chance to hide, disguise, or elude former slave status. For a marked visibility enforced the division between former slave and non-slave, although history defies the distinction, and supported racial hierarchy. The ease, therefore, of moving from the dishonor associated with the slave body to the contempt in which the freed Black body was held became almost seamless, because the intervening years of the Enlightenment saw a marriage of aesthetics and science and a move toward transcendent whiteness. In this racism, the slave body disappears, but the Black body remains and is morphed into a synonym for poor people, a synonym for criminalism, and a flashpoint for public policy. For there is no discourse in economics, in education, in housing, in religion, in healthcare, in entertainment, in the criminal justice system, in welfare, in labor policies, in almost any of the national debates that continue to baffle us, in which the Black body is not the elephant in the room, the ghost in the machine, the subject, if not the topic, of the negotiations. This museum's projects have enormous powers. First is the power of memorializing. The impulse to memorialize certain events, people, and populations comes at certain times. When what has happened is finally understood, or is a forthright assertion of civic or personal pride, tombs and palaces are built, flowers heaped, statues rise, archives, hospitals, parks, and museums are constructed. Time being such an important factor in this process, most of the participants in the events being remembered never see them. But the growth of this country in the 16th, 17th, and 18th centuries, resting heavily on the availability of free labor, is complicated and exceptional. Exceptional because of its length and its chattel nature. Complex because of its intricate relationship to the cultural, economic, and intellectual development of the nation. This is what must be remembered. There is another power this project has of making us aware of the ever flexible, always adaptable, persistently slippery forms of modern racism in which the slave body is reconstructed and re-enters the Black body as an American form of ethnic cleansing, in which a monstrously large number of Black men and women are carefully swept into prisons, where they become once again free labor, once again corralled for profit. Make no mistake, the privatization of prisons is less about unburdening taxpayers than it is about providing bankrupt communities with sources of income, and especially about providing corporations with a captured population available for unpaid labor. The third power of the museum's project, perhaps is most important, certainly it's most gratifying, is the gaze it has cast on the ameliorating, triumphant aspects of the history of the Republic in Black and white. This is what I sense, in spite of all the commercial and political strategies to separate, divide, and distort us. Young people seem to be truly tired of racism's control over their lives. The art community is exhausted by and rebellious toward its limitations. Low-income people who discover how entangled and held down they are in its divisive economic grasp loathe it. Scholars, unintimidated by its cling, are disassembling it. We are becoming more industrious in substituting accuracy, other perspectives, other narratives in place of phantom histories, polluted politics, and media manipulation. I am pleased that my appearance coincides with the exhibition of African American artists whose eyes encountered at every level the stereotyping and visual debasement prevalent everywhere. Through their art, their taste, their genius, we see African American subjects as individuals, as cherished, as understood. Viewing this display of their force, their life-giving properties, their humanity, their joy, their will ought to be enough to forestall the reach of racism tentacles, ought to be enough to protect us from its uninformed, uneducated, relentlessly toxic touch. Just as the commitment of this community ought to be enough. Don't you think? That was Toni Morrison. Nonfiction selection today for you on Frankenstein Tea. That is from her book, The Source of Self-Regard. Thanks for coming. Have a great afternoon. I'm off to a little bit of a timeout. I'm back at it tomorrow, and I'll be here at 3 o'clock live for an episode of Frankenstein Tea. I hope everybody's doing well. Thanks. Peace.